All right, so this is a screencast on how to do a data table and a graph of your pendulum data. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need to set up your data inside of a Google Sheet. So when you're finished, it'll look something like this, but obviously you'll have different numbers. But when you first get started, it's probably going to look a little more like this. So your independent variable is the length of the string, and you're going to want to title that at the top. Now a trick is here to make so you can actually see it. If you come up here with the arrow and double click, it'll make it the right width for that to fit. Same thing here with the average time for one period. We come up into this column, we double click it, and now it's big enough for you to see. The other thing is we have our levels of the IV, so we need to label that. So we're going to select these three cells, and we're going to merge the cells, and that way it is just one cell. And now we're ready to type in our information there. We'll want to center it, and we're going to call this the period of, no, we're going to call this time of 10 periods. And then you always want to put your units in parentheses, so I'm going to put seconds in parentheses there. And then that's going to put that right there in the middle. Okay, next what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come through and get your averages. So in order to do that, I'll show you how you do that. You're going to highlight where you want your average to be, and then click on this functions button, and we'll go to an average. And then you're going to highlight these three cells that you want to average. Once it comes up like this, you'll hit enter, and it'll give you your average right there. Then a shortcut is to click on the cell and just come to this little square and drag it down, and then it will know to do the averages of the ones below it like that. Now, when it comes to this column, we're going to want our average time for one period, whereas you have it now for 10 periods. And the way it tells you to do that, and what you'd also figure out, is you just need to take the average divided by 10. So in order to do a calculation, you click on the cell and hit the equal sign. Then you tell it what you want to, what math you want to do. So I want to take this cell, the average, and I want to divide it, which is the slash, and I want to divide it by 10. Now I hit enter, and that'll give me my answer there. Then, just like before, you're going to use that shortcut, drag down, and you'll have all of the averages there. Now, it's too many numbers here, so we're going to come and we're going to decrease that decimal down to something that makes a little more sense. And that gives us our graph, or excuse me, our data table. And then you can make it a little more visually appealing by putting in some different colors to show the important information. All right, then what we need to do is we need to make a graph of this data. And so this is what it'll look like when you're finished. Notice it has a title with the effect of the IV on the DV. Both the y-axis is labeled with the units in parentheses, and the x-axis is labeled with the unit in parentheses. So let's go in and do that. So now we go back to our sheet, and we want to make a graph, so we click Insert Chart. And we don't have any data, so we got to tell it what to graph. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add the data for the x-axis. So we're going to click on that, and this is our independent variable, so this is going to go on the x-axis. So we're going to hit OK for that. Then we need to, this is what we're worried about, the average time for one period in seconds. So we want to add a series here, and we're going to select this data now and hit OK. And now we have a column chart, but we want to turn it into a line chart. And turns out that it's already clicked use column H's labels, which is going to give us the proper graph. Notice we have time on the the length of string on the X, and we have time on the Y. So that's what we want. Now let's go in. I like to go right up here and move it to its own sheet. And now we can edit the chart. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to put in a title. So let's go to Customize. And right here where it says Chart and Axis Titles. So we'll go to Chart Title, and then you can type in the effect of the IV on the DV. Then use the down arrow, do your horizontal axis title, which is going to be the length of string in centimeters, and then our vertical axis title, which will give us the period in seconds. All right, once you finish that, we got to still make it a little bit better. So we're going to come down here to our grid lines, and let's do our horizontal axis first. And notice it goes from 0 up to 70, which is good. Actually, we'll have to wait on that. Let's go to horizontal axis here, and we're going to have our minimum value at 0, which it already is. Well, no, I don't think it is. So we're going to put in our minimum value at 0, and we're going to go all the way up to 100 for this graph, and I'll show you why in just a second. So now you can see it goes from 0 all the way up to 100. Now we want to go to the vertical axis, and that one's going from 0 up to 2, which is what we want, so we don't have to worry about a minimum and maximum value there. All right, now once you finish that, we're ready to go to grid lines, and we're going to do the horizontal axis first. Notice that there's major grid lines are automatically, and that makes sense, every major grid line is 25. But we want to have something in between there. So let's go to the minor grid line count, and we're actually going to need 4 minor grid lines. So if you think about this, here's 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So by putting in 4 minor grid lines, that gives us 5 total, and that is a good breakdown of that x-axis. Then we're going to go to the vertical axis. All right, and once again we have 0 to 0.5. So we're going to want 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and then 0.5. So once again, our minor grid lines, we're going to need 4 of those. So that makes it a lot easier to see what's going on when you do that. Now let's go to the series. And I always like to put in the dots. Right now it has no point size, so we're going to put it in at 7, and now it puts a dot at all of our data points that we got when we did our experiment. So that's a good thing to have in there. And then we want to add a trend line. So we're going to click on the trend line, and you can see this is a linear trend line, and it follows the path pretty well, but there's actually a better one. So let's go down, we'll try exponential. Nope, that doesn't look very good. And then finally we'll do polynomial. And you can see with the polynomial grid line, you get a nice curve that cuts through all those points. And what's good about that is that allows you to make predictions. So when you need to make a prediction on what is the period of a pendulum going to be, if it's 100 centimeters long, then you can follow right up this line, see where it intersects the y-axis, come over, and we're going to be looking at 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.35, more like around 1.357. 1.87 would be pretty close to what you need. And then once you're finished with that, you should be able to have a completed chart. So you can get rid of that, and then you can go back, and when you look at them, you'll have your nice data table, and then the nice